The Game Schooler Podcast is a weekly audio show that educates new and experienced gamers about the awesomeness of tabletop gaming. In this week's episode, we'll cover Rock Hard 1977, our game of the week, discuss balancing fun and winning in the School of Gaming, and wrap it up by revealing our high five anticipated games of 2025. Welcome to the Game Schooler Podcast. I'm your host, Doug Kotecki, along with my co-host, Dr. Michael McCabe. How's it going, Michael?
What's going on, Doug? How are you?
I am cold.
Yeah. Well, yeah, you want a weekly weather report, a daily weather report. That's a fact, man.
What is it? Right now it's a balmy 21 degrees.
Balmy. Yeah, we've had negative real temp of 13-ish degrees. Yeah, just wild temperatures here in the Midwestern United States.
Yeah. You love when kids get to stay home from school because it's so cold outside. Not even a snow day. It's just...
cold day.
Yeah.
We have cold days.
Frostbite in 10 minutes. So.
Right, to the point where nobody can argue it. Like, even the older people like us and people decades older, don't go outside today. You need to just stay inside and play some good old board games with your dad.
Yeah, that worked out well.
Good. What'd you get to the table, man?
Well, I finally got my version of 3D Catan played over the weekend.
So proud of you, Doug.
And it's one of those editions where I'm like, I never need the regular version of this again. This is my game, and we played it once over the weekend, and my middle daughter won, and we decided to play it again during the cold day, snow day. And
really?
Yeah. And so right after we got done, my wife was like, we got to play that again. We got to get that to the table again. So she obviously is a fan of it. And we just don't get as many family. I think we were talking about that in the New Year's resolutions episode of just wishing that we got more family game time. And it can be hard. We have got 5 and the ages are kind of spread out. But
5 total people in the family.
Yes.
Doug did not add children since episode 202. Just want to clarify.
So we ended up playing it again. And it was awesome because it came down to, if you're not familiar with the game starts out kind of slow and then can build up pretty fast as you're racing to 10 points. And it was one of those things where my eldest daughter had 9 points, and I had 9 points. Oh, actually, I had 8 points. And so she was very close to winning. And her mom ended up buying a development card the turn before her, which had a victory point on it, which was her last strategy. Is I got to buy. So I think she bought 2 development cards, both of them knights. She wasn't going to get that. Came around to my turn, and I just had an amazing engine and conversion that I basically then was at a point where I could just build as many roads as I needed to reclaim the longest road, get my 10 points in the win. If it went back around to her, she probably would have won on the next turn. And it was one of those things where she kind of wanted to flip the table and was so frustrated. And she was kind of laughing and kind of crying at the same time.
Yeah.
And my wife and I were just dying laughing, and she's carrying on or whatever. And she's yelling at me, and she said, a good dad would have let me win. And I said to her, I go, well, I guess you better get a new dad then. And as she's crying and laughing, she goes, I can't. I don't have 4 of you to trade in, which if you're familiar with Catan, is the trade-in ratio for
any
goods.
Resource.
So she was hoping that she had 4 dads that she could trade in for a new one. But we just had a blast. And
she would get to pick her dad then, right? If
Yeah,
she had the 4,
yeah,
right? Because you get your resources.
Any resource,
sure.
any dad, any dad you could get. But I bring that up because A, it was awesome. But the other thing is, it was cool to be playing. This is probably the first time that my family has played what I would consider kind of a gamer game as a family, something that is going to take an hour. I think we've played Ticket to Ride before, but something where I feel like, yeah, there's a little bit more thought going on here. It's a longer play time. The theme is not super exciting. And it was the first time that I felt like, wow, we played like a gamer game as a family, and it was really cool. And it was one of those things where, you know, when you start having kids, you're like, oh, wouldn't it be cool to play a game, you know, games, and you could kind of have a game night whenever you wanted type of thing. And I guess my lesson in this, or a pointer, is like, my next step is not to introduce them to more hobby games.
Sure.
I'm enjoying what it is. And take it as it comes, but the idea of like, oh, well, now I've got a group that I've got guinea pigs to play stuff with, is not really the right direction to go.
Yeah, the next step is to keep playing Catan, right?
Yeah, as a public service announcement, you know, it's just because you have people that will play games with you doesn't mean that they need to play every game with you, or that you need to introduce them to every game you love immediately.
Yeah.
So it was a good time. So that was awesome.
That is awesome. And I'm just going to follow up on your awesomeness a little bit. Doug was sharing not those details. That sounds like second game details, but first game details at church on Sunday. And my wife said to Doug, and I was kind of out of earshot, but I've never played Catan. And I'm thinking,
she's saying that to Katie, my wife.
You've played it a dozen times. And so then I tried to explain, you know, we called it Settlers. That's what we called it when we played it. And she was adamant that she hasn't played it. And I wasn't logging my plays back in 2003 to 2005. I know. I'm thinking we only played 3 games. We played Ticket to Ride, Dominion, and Settlers in that order. And then we'd run it back and play Settlers, Dominion, and Ticket to Ride. Like we had 3 games in our house, you know, and then dominoes. So that was interesting.
So did you bring up screenshots to show her the game that she got? She didn't get the memo from Asmodee that they changed the name from Settlers of Catan just to Catan?
No, because she didn't like Settlers. So that's where I'm fine with her having a moment and not remembering Catan. And now I have a diabolical plan where I'm just going to introduce our 3D version of Catan and say, here's a game the Kotekis just love. It's one of Katie's favorite games. Let's get it played. And then we can play Quacks or Snow White Gemstone Mine. But I'm going to do the opposite of what you did. I'm going to just throw Catan.
Well, it helps that my wife loves the game.
Yeah, that does help. Because you only need 2 people to love it, and then you can recruit the third person, right? The game does require that you have 3 people. And it's just fantastic.
It's also
episode 14, game of the week for any of those wanting to go out and listen.
It's
also
probably
one we should redo at some point.
It's also fun seeing younger people trade. You know, my 9-year-old trading and not necessarily knowing the full value of stuff, or it's like not realizing that everybody needs brick because it is not being produced very much. And I just need brick. Does anybody have? No, Piper. Nobody's got brick. We've gone 3 times around. Everybody wants brick. We're all waiting for brick to come out. And then just like the little moments of like, oh, I'll do this nice for you. And then they really handled some of the take that meanness and the robber and stuff like that much better than I thought they would. So
that's great.
It worked out really well.
Well, congratulations, Doug. I feel like you deserve a pat on the back.
Oh, so I appreciate it.
Not there to deliver that in person. I'll just give you the old thumbs up here virtually. Yeah, I want to follow up on something as well, and I'll be quick with it, but I want to circle back to the New Year's resolutions and just explain a bit further on what I meant by, you know, enjoying learning new games and replaying games. And I think you just touched on a great example of replaying games. You didn't need to review the rules for Catan, right? Or Settlers. Right? You knew the rules to both
extensively.
of them.
Yes. The core rules, correct.
Yes, you have those down. And I think, most our last high five, it wasn't most anticipated. It was games from 2024 that we still want to play, right? It's basically our most anticipated games of 2024 still in 2025. And I was really fortunate to get the number one on my list taken care of. And that was Endeavor Deep Sea, which I am actually sitting next to my game table. So I just grabbed the box. And I won't say a whole lot about the game other than, one, I really enjoyed it. Two, I could instantly see 2 or 3 people that I wanted to play it with, and I didn't have that sense or feeling, okay, that one's boxed up, get the next game going so I can get ready for a future game of the week. It was really, nope, I'm going to leave this out. I'm going to continue to explore it. The game just has a different set. Without spoilers, it has different setups and scenarios that you can play in each time, and this is a game that has been covered at length by other shows as well, and one that I do anticipate will get into. I don't know if it's sooner rather than later, because one of the things we've been talking about is, it's not bad to be a year behind. And this is one that, Doug, I think this is going to sit just right alongside my collection of Deep Blue. Another, very thematic game, whereas that one you're playing cards out of your hands. This one you're actually recruiting specialists that give you different action selections each turn. So just fun to learn a game and explore a single game and not feel like, okay, now I got to turn on to the next 3 so that I'm ready and this is in the queue, and just kind of a different approach on playing and enjoying and engaging with the game rather than just running through it as quick as I can so that I can move on to the next one. So it's awesome, and following up, just knowing that when you play a good game, it's like, this is going to work for a few different people. I really enjoyed this. It was cool. It was good.
Yeah, there's been a lot of discussion on the Discord server about consuming, collecting, playing games, and all of those things, and some of the stuff that we brought up in the New Year's episode and things like that. And it does kind of remind me of what you're saying along the lines of enjoying a good meal and just sitting back, playing a game, and enjoying the game while you're playing it and sitting with it, and not, like you said, racing through it. It's like, all right, we got that one crossed off. And even if you're not a reviewer, you're not a content creator, it's like, okay, well, I've got 5 hours to play. I want to get these 5 games in. And let's go. And we played this one. Good. Checked it off. I got it played. It's no longer on my to-be-played shelf. We played it. And thinking about it as okay, I crossed it off of the list rather than, no, enjoy playing that game. And sometimes it kind of reminds me of, I hear it a lot from teachers and parents when you're preoccupied with, feeding kids or your small lunch break. And you just get into a habit of well, I've got to eat my lunch fast because I've got kids to take care of, and you're rushing through it. And then, we'll go out on a date night or something like that, and it's like, well, all right, we don't need to jam the food down our mouth in 35 seconds. There are no kids here. Let's just enjoy the meal and space it out a little bit. And sometimes I think that's how we treat
our
games.
Annual date night at the Steer Inn in Indianapolis, which is
me and you,
absolutely
but we
awesome.
Definitely relax there. We
close
close the place down.
What type of pie? Yes, I'll take one of each.
But I think we do that with games sometimes. Just get into, all right, off the list. It's more of a check mark than the actual experience of playing the game. So.
And very interesting conversation because people are at different places in the hobby, right?
Yeah.
Especially if you're depending on how long you've been playing, how enthusiastic you are, if you're a new gamer, if you have a collection and you are definitely trying to whittle it down. Really good conversation over there.
All right, for our spotlight this week, we've got a game called Now, spelled N-O-W exclamation if you're looking on Board Game Geek. Came out in 2024 by Randolph and Scorpion Masque. The designer is Silvano Sorrentino, and the artist is Fanny Saulnier. 3 to 8 players, 15 minutes, 8 plus is the age range. Probably pretty good.
Yep.
Now is a real-time competitive card game where everyone plays at the same time. discard your cards quickly as possible in search of the perfect number. Watch out, your deck is limited and you'll go through it faster than you think. Think you have the best card? Shout now and get as close as possible to the target numbers without going over to win them. Get the most points, leaving your opponents with none. So you have a deck of cards. Up to 8 players can play this game, and each deck has a different set of numbers in it. And 3 cards will come out every round in the center of the table, and you will have 1 card of your deck facing you. You kind of hold it like a cell phone, kind of in front of your face.
That's your active card.
And then you say go, and you can choose to discard the card that you have and get a new active card, or you could shout now. Whenever you think you have a card that will do good for you, which essentially the cards in the middle of the table are also numbers, and you are trying to get your card to go as close to that number without going over. And there are perfect matches in there, which can give you some extra stuff. But as you go through, you can just keep discarding and discarding. Eventually, you may run out of cards and only have 1 left. And that
you will run out eventually.
Yeah. And you will have that card until the refresh card comes out, which allows you to pick up the rest of your hand, shuffle it, and kind of start over. And so it's a fast game and really interesting of when you can kind of how far and how fast you want to go through that deck, because what's good for this round of scorecards might be terrible for the next, and you're burning all of your cards trying to win something for this scoring round. And the scoring cards, when you get them, they either have red or blue dashes on them at the end of the game.
Some have both. Yeah.
Yeah, some have both. Basically, you're going to subtract the smaller number from the larger number. So if I've got 15 blue hash marks down the side and 3, I'm going to get 12 points there. So that's roughly how you play the game. It's a great real-time game, which I'm usually not a fan of most real-time games, but this one is great because it doesn't require memory or any of the things that my slow brain can't handle.
Yeah, it plays very fast. As we mentioned, the whole game is played in about 15 minutes. I think the other thing, the rule set is incredibly simple, and it's one of those where you can do a rolling teach. Where you can truly just throw out the 3 cards and say, okay, we're going to do a fake round here, and we're going to, when you are ready, say now. And then people, there's always that one person that's left over last that doesn't say now, and then you get one more chance to throw down your card and discard it, but then you don't know what your last active card is that you're going to be stuck with. And so you can have that moment right in the little demo of the game. I really like that halfway through the game, that reset card comes out and you get to pick up all of your cards again. There's that moment of relief that oftentimes, will come 2 or 3 times in a game at the end of a round when you get all of your workers back. And I feel that same moment of relief in a 10 to 15 minute game. There's that sense of excitement that, oh, good, I get them back. And then you start shuffling them up again. I've played this with 2 or 3 different groups and have not had a bad experience with it. People have seemed to really like it and enjoy it. The last thing I'll say before I send it back to you, Doug, it seems to be a hidden gem. I haven't heard many other shows really talking about it, and it might catch fire at some point if one of the big podcasts or the big content creators stumble into it. When you have 3,500 games that come out every year, you get these hidden gems. And for me, this is one that I don't have many other games that do this. 15 minutes with the what would you call it? Almost like a variable auction.
Kind of, yeah.
So it's been a fun one. It's been a hit in our house. How about you?
Well, I mean, it goes up to 8 players. I love that. Like most card games, I think this is pretty common among a lot of card games, is that it makes sense after a single round. Sometimes with a lot of card games, you're explaining it and they're like kind of fast, and people are kind of like, okay, and then you play around and everybody's like, got it, ready to go. And this game is certainly a great example of that. The tension, anxiety of that little real time pressure is awesome. It's a good good mix to be able to play with 8 players and have that and be an easy teach. The other thing that I'll throw out there is it is a great game that the more times you play it, you realize that the subtle strategy that is underneath of because you have to take cards whether you want to or not.
Right.
So if I start
But Doug, I'm not collecting red. I don't want that red card with 4 bars.
Yeah, and now all of a sudden you however it laid out, you get all 3 of those cards. Like I only wanted the one, and you get into that thing of like, ooh, I've got a couple of red cards here. It looks like I'm going to go for red, and then that kind of changes what you go after going forward. But you can't do that until the second or third game. You start to realize where you can manipulate and push on different levers. And for a 15-minute game, that's the fact that you could get 4 of these in an hour and start diving into a little bit of the strategy that's there is pretty cool.
Yeah, the other thing I would say is if you are game schooling, and especially if you have that 8 to 13-year-old range, this is an indoor recess gem. If you other games that we've talked about that I know that some educators and librarians have gotten after, I don't want to say listening to our show, but we've clearly discussed. I'm thinking of like a point salad, and this is even more compressed and even easier to teach and get up and running. So
yeah. All right, so that is our spotlight game now. Check that one out. It's a really good one. We've talked earlier about the Discord. You can sign up for that by going to gameschooler.com/Discord. A great community, always discussing things that come up in the podcast, what people are playing, you name it, they're talking about it there. If you like what we're doing, spread the word about the podcast. We would love it if you do. And if you have questions or comments, reach out to us. Email at gameschooler.com. We'd love to hear from you. Now let's move on to the game of the week.
The game of the week. The game of the week is an in-depth look at a family-friendly game we think you should try if you get the chance. This week's game is Rock Hard 1977. Doug, give us the stats.
All right, this one came out in 2024, published by DeVere. The designer is Jackie Fox, and the art is by Jennifer Geiner. 2 to 5 players, 45 to 90 minutes. Box says 14 plus. Board Game Geek says 12 plus. I'm going to lead towards the 13 to 14 is probably the range that I would start this one at. Yep. And we're going to classify this as a hobby game.
Yep.
This is one that I think if you look on Board Game Geek suffers from the idea of gamers not knowing what non-gamers can handle. And so it has a Board Game Geek ranking of a light hobby game, but it's a hobby game. It's 1977, and you're an up-and-coming musician dreaming of making it big with your band. Over the next few months, you'll rehearse, play gigs, write songs, and promote your band. With careful planning and a little luck, you'll earn the most fame and become the best new artist of the year. Designed by Jackie Fox, who is a member of the 1970s rock band The Runaways, Rock Hard 1977 is played over a maximum of 9 rounds, each representing a typical day of 1 month in 1977, from April through December. You win the game by accruing the most fame, by increasing your reputation, your chops and songs, achieving production, performance, and publicity bonuses, and gaining record deals and earning royalties, playing concerts, and hanging out at the hottest after-hours spot. Are you ready to live like a rock star?
Wait. Try that again, Doug. Try.
You ready to live like a rock star?
Yeah!
Sunday. The game is essentially a worker placement game. There are 3 phases to each round. There is a morning, night, and after hours portion of the board, and each of those areas has worker placement spots that you can go to. And then there are several that are available throughout the entire game that you can go to at any time. One of the unique things is you start out with a job. Your job will tell you at which phase of those you work, and some of them can be variable, depending on your job and how much
some
you get.
You can only work in the morning. Some you could work in the afternoon, but it depends on a dice roll.
Yep,
so there's
like
different
that.
jobs.
Yep,
in 1977.
Yeah, exactly. And so eventually you may get to a point where you quit your job if you don't show up for work. So essentially, if you don't take the work your job action on the time of day that you're supposed to be doing it, you get a missed work token. If you get 3 of those, you're fired or quit. It's up to you.
You're fired.
A
if
manager.
You don't show up for work for the 3rd time, you're fired.
Well, unless you quit.
Real.
Unless you quit. Quitting means you're not showing up. I'm out. Peace out. So then you have a manager that gives you a special ability. The character you start with gives you a special ability. Eventually, you're working up your skills, which they call your chops, your reputation, and your songwriting craft, working up to get a record deal. All of the things that we talked about there in the description are actions and things that you can do throughout the game. Very thematic game. I talked about this. This was my game of the year for 2024. But basically, I think what I love most about this game is the marriage of theme and Euro mechanisms.
Yeah.
That I can't express how easy it is to remember weird rules and things when they make sense thematically.
Well, especially visually, too, on the board, how everything's laid out.
Yeah. And the one thing, too, we didn't mention, there is a component of this game called candy, which if you take candy, you get a sugar buzz, which allows you to take potentially a second action in a round. I'll let you listeners determine what you think candy represents in this game in 1977 in the rock scene. However, I think they do a pretty good job of disguising it. I know some reviewers talk about, you're going to have a conversation. It's like, actually, I'm not really sure that you do because...
Well, and so much of it's age dependent. If you're playing with a 9-year-old, 10-year-old, 11-year-old, you don't need to have a conversation oftentimes. Maybe you do. I don't know.
And you're probably not playing this with a 9 or 10-year-old in the first place.
That's right where I was going.
Yeah,
and so if you're... we put this at one, a hobby game, 2, as 13-ish plus. So that conversation might be a sentence. It's not okay, before we play this game, Yeah,
we're got to turn on an NBC PSA. Now you know the more you know segment.
I would just show one that you've previously recorded, Doug.
Yeah. And as far as the other thing is, there are one of the segments is the after hours. So after you get done performing a gig, you can go to different bars and nightclubs, and they have kind of story elements and actions and bonuses. I haven't gone through every one of those cards, so I can't speak necessarily to the family friendliness of it. I haven't run across anything that I was like, ooh, wow, this is super objectionable. So go through there. But again, we're talking about a game that you should probably be playing with a 14-year-old in the first place.
Yeah, probably PG-13, something like that. But
yeah.
Let's jump into the game and why this was game of the year for you, Doug. And I really do want to get into some of that because the story of this game is one that I'm not going to say that we were critical. And I know you've always been excited about it from the moment it came out. It's just this was a Gen Con release. And so there is something overwhelming about a Gen Con release because so many games get released at Gen Con. And it's one that I'll just say, when I played this for the first time, and it was in October at a local convention with you, man, I was completely blown away by just how awesome the game is. From the setup with the characters you get, all the way to some of the hidden objectives, to the actual gameplay and trying to figure out which combos could fire off together.
Yeah.
Even down to what you can't do because you get blocked out of things. So just an excellent game.
Well, it does a couple of things really well. It has some good variety in the form of events. There's an event that happens every round, which may block spaces or give you a bonus that you weren't expecting. There's a performance or a little gig deck that there's always a random place that you can perform at every round that gives you an extra bonus, or is, it can be a little bit more special, and certainly an awesome place to go early in the game. So it does those things right. It does the variability parts right. But what I think it really does well is that it has a great balance of limited actions. So when you first hear the rules and think about what you have to do, it seems a little overwhelming. Like there's no way I could possibly accomplish this. And it feels like there are so many places I want to go, but I can't go. However, at the same time, it also feels like you're accomplishing a lot.
Yeah.
And it's such a hard line to stay on, because there are so many games.
Wait. From a design perspective?
From a design perspective,
okay,
and playing and having both of those feelings. Because I've played games where they try and limit that, and it starts feeling like work, like I can't get anything done, and it's so hard to get 2 points. Like you've played some of those games where it's just like, gosh, it just feels like you're pulling teeth. And then on the other side of the spectrum is games where it's like, oh, I put a thing down here and I get 8 billion points. I put a thing down there and it's like, you blocked me, but you kind of didn't block me. This one balances that so well, where Michael can go to a spot and I'm like, oh, that's where I was going to go. I guess I'll go here, but you're still accomplishing things. So you feel the pain and the joy throughout the entire game.
Well, and I feel like you mentioned that Jackie Fox, the designer, is a rock star, was in The Runaways. I think the other obligatory mention anytime somebody is reviewing, telling the story of this game, also a champion of Jeopardy. So you're talking about a human being who is not only accomplished, but knows how to win a game a time or two.
Yeah.
And there is that. So the times that I've played this game, I've had that sense of, okay, I'm going to do a deep dive into how you and I play games, because we've played a lot of games together. If this is your first episode, it might feel like a little bit of inside baseball. Folks, this game has passive income. You can generate money by royalties. So the first time I saw Doug do it, we were halfway through the game. I was like, okay, I am going to lose by 20. And I probably lost by 20. I didn't look at my log to play before coming in.
And the passive income comes in the form of getting a record deal, which then is giving you royalties throughout the rest of the game if you have one.
Thank you. So then the second time I played with Doug, knowing that is what he's going to do, what do you think I worked to actively do? Either prevent you from getting your record deal as quickly as possible, or try to get my record deal. Now, even though I failed, I just want to mention that I think this is something that Rock Hard 1977 also gets right. It takes into account game styles, and which when people talk about replayability, people who've listened to the show know that if there's a racing element, I'm going to try to get out and dominate that racing element better, more efficiently, quicker than anybody else, to try to run up different tracks and get combos going that way. And knowing that Doug's going to try to maximize that passive income through royalties, there are other facets in the game that allow me to try to get the record deal first, whether it's or build or get into a stadium to have different combinations through building up my chops. Yeah. So I just think that the game takes into account those factors as well. It's not just a beautiful thematic worker placement game. It also is a game which really accommodates repeated plays for gamers.
Yeah, well, and then the last game we played, I didn't win. And so there's you can get a bunch of points by playing big concerts, and I just wasn't able to get my stuff up there to play what I wanted. And some of that is determined by your manager, your ability of what you kind of go after,
and then objectives, which nobody knows you're going after.
Personal objectives, and then there's some public ones of what you're going after. So it has that. The other thing I'll say about
dear listener, before you congratulate me, I didn't win either. So just for the record, and still had a blast. So
the other thing too I want to throw out there is that this game has an awesome 2-player version. So a lot of times when you play bigger games 2-player, they have autonomous bots and all this stuff that you need to clear out. You need to play on a special board. This game pretty much just has a little chart card that you block off a section every round.
Oh, that's right.
You can't go here. You look at it and then you put your thing. It's like, that's blocked off this round.
For this round only. Yep.
And it just makes it so easy to go from round to round. It's got
That's the only rule modifier, right? In the two-player version? Yeah.
Yeah. And then it does a great job of kind of having the beginning of round and end of round flow that we get done with a month and pull out I don't know if I had the rule book or if it's on the card, but you're just like, we do this.
It's right on the little player card that everybody has.
Back up to the top, and we're ready to go again. So that makes it easy. The artwork and production on this game is awesome. Your player board is a guitar amp where you keep track of your reputation and chops, and your songs that you've written are all dials on the amp. The paper money is the best paper money I've ever seen in a game. It feels like real money.
That's praise. Well, and it's
Do you disagree?
No, I think it's awesome. I'm not a huge fan of most paper money. What I love about the money in Rock Hard 1970 in board games, I should say. Big fan of real paper money. Love that stuff. Okay, but in a board game, it just goes wrong all the time, and I get flashbacks to bad Monopoly and people hiding stuff. The cool thing about the money in Rock Hard are the drawings and the sketches and the care and the time that went into it.
Yeah,
and it has kind of a grimy feel. It's not perfectly laminated. No, that's just the best paper money ever. Put that on a box, Doug.
Well, it's one of those things where it's like this is like the one game in my collection that if you were playing with a bucket of fried chicken next to you handling that money, I'd be like, yeah, fine, it works thematically. The junkier this money looks, the better it fits in with the theme. So have at it. Yeah, I mean, those are my big things. I touched on all of I think this is going to fit on a game night, being a hobby game.
Game night, convention, weekend.
Sure, yeah. You're going to be playing with other gamers.
Yep.
My family is not jumping from Catan to Rock Hard 1977 anytime soon.
Yet, growth mindset.
Yeah, exactly. So what else you got on this one, Michael? Anything else?
I have a couple skills that I just wanted to touch on quickly. Not that we have to do that every single episode and get the full banter of skills, but I do think that this game, and why I put it in that 13, 14-year-old range, the strategic and tactical thinking blended together, there's a level of enjoyment that I get in thinking about the next round because of what I cannot do in this round. Well, I could not work this round, and I know I need to pay my manager, but I've got a couple of months yet before that bill to the manager's paid, and it does feel a little bit like adulting. It does feel a little bit like I know this is coming up. I've got to be able to pay the bill. What am I going to do next round to be able to pay the bill because I couldn't go to work this month? I'm not going to say that high school business educators should get rid of the game of life and bring in Rock Hard 1977, but hey, maybe you should consider getting rid of the game of life and bringing in Rock Hard 1977. It's the way that what am I doing right now and what do I need to prepare for going forward? How am I making progress without slowing down?
Yeah.
I really took my time, both games that I played this, but I don't feel, and you step in, you're not going to hurt my feelings. I don't feel like I was slowing down the entire table.
No.
I was just trying to learn it and map it out, and it just moves really well.
It's that perfect balance of having options, but not too many options. So, the AP, the analysis paralysis, doesn't come up, or I haven't noticed it in the game. And I think what you're talking about, too, is like that, the logistics of, all right, I want to do this, and then you have to backtrack a couple of turns to figure out how to get there, and that cascade of actions keeps happening over and over again.
Yeah.
Like, I want to play this concert for whatever reason. It's like, I need to get chops and do this. It's like, I get my chops and can write songs over here, and I can do that there, and then if I play that concert, then I can get a record deal, or I can tape it down. Like, all of those things kind of piggyback off one another. And I think that's what makes it feel like you're actually progressing thematically and gameplay-wise, that you're you're actually growing and improving throughout the game. It's like, oh,
Right.
I've got to pay my manager at the end of this month. Okay, how am I?
Because if you don't, there is a pain, especially as the game goes on. You lose points.
You know,
So
and
you better have it figured out.
And so you're thinking, okay, how can I'll get $2 from there. If I get this there, then I do that. You know, you're doing all of those kind of quick calculations, but again, never in an overwhelming way of like, ooh, how am I going to do that? It's just.
And the table's doing it at once. It's not just. And so I just think we've talked about this before. For me, this sits on a list of, this is a hobby game I want to make sure I'm playing at least every year. And even right now, I want to play this, you know, I'd love to get another 3 to 4 plays in 2025 of this. I really want to continue to learn and engage with it. It's just an awesome game.
Yep. So that is our game of the week, Rock Hard 1977 from DeVere.
The School of Gaming. In the School of Gaming, we discuss concepts, keywords, etiquette, and helpful ideas in the world of gaming. This week, we discuss balancing fun and winning. All right, Doug, go ahead and lead us into this segment.
I think.
Wrong.
I think that a lot of this depends on how you approach the hobby. And I think that it goes towards the winning side, right? How competitive are you going to try and be? How upset are you going to be if you don't win? And I think about it like this. I feel like this is probably a topic that's more geared towards you and maybe something that you have a hard time with. I know you're a very competitive person. And I think so, you know, when the topic came up, I was like, what am I going to think of? You know, what am I going to write down about this? What are my thoughts and what are my notes? But it kind of occurred to me that although I do like winning, the only time I really would get upset or care if I lost as opposed to winning or anything like that was if I was actively playing the same game over and over, trying to master it, trying to explore all the optimal strategy, and trying to improve every time I played.
Interesting.
Because then I would have put in the effort and I'm expecting the rewards out of it, of that would make me competitive. But I don't play games that way. And I would imagine that would be the same thing for you in basketball. It's like you're training all season and you're trying to get ready and you put all this work in to compete. And then whether that goes for, you know, good or bad, it, you know, has more of an impact on you. I'm playing a game and it's like, if I win, great. If I lose, I'm not immediately looking across the table and being like, well, clearly he's a better player than me. He did everything better or he's smarter than me. I don't think that. And I think that's what I enjoy about games is like, I'm just exploring and it's a sandbox. And even if it's a game that I played, like Catan, I played a bunch of times. I'm not looking at it when my 9-year-old beats me and being like, well, I should have won that game. It's like, Doug, you're not training to be a professional game player. I'm not in the World Series of Gaming. So I think that's a big thing for me is how I approach it. I don't know. Where do you clock in on this one?
Yeah, I think for me, the word game brings a connotation that I trace all the way back to some of my earliest memories with winning, whether it's not being able to beat my dad in chess and he wouldn't let me win, or competing against my older sisters, or even, I'll tell you what, Doug, we had some knockdown, teary fights with my cousins in Monopoly. So, and then, you know, there are athletes of a certain age, or at least, you know, tales of competitors in the craft, like Michael Jordan, the greatest basketball player. He would compete to see whose luggage would come out of the shoot first at an airport, and oh, by the way, he tipped the scales by bribing the people to make sure that it was his.
Yeah.
Right? Or Steve Prefontaine, the great distance runner, would never let children beat him in a race. So he'd be running a fun lap with kids, 9 and 10-year-old kids who are having the day of their life. They're running with yay! And then all of a sudden, at the end, he destroys them and runs because he can't let a losing mindset come in. And I think the hobby's different. Games are meant to be shared experiences. And I've really shifted towards that and separate. This is not an athletic contest with a winner and a loser. There can be, and as cheesy as what I'm about to say, I really believe this in my core. There can be multiple winners at the table, even though only one person has the win. Yeah. If people walk away and experience that game and had fun playing it, it's the hobby is not an athletic contest.
Yeah.
For the vast, you brought up the World Series of board games. For the vast majority of people, especially people who are in the hobby and who are playing 100+ titles a year, I mean, you have to have people that you're comfortable playing it with, but part of the joy is also getting to experience games with new people that you've never met before. Yeah. You just have that shared experience for 45 to 90 minutes with somebody that I'll never get to see them again. Yeah. But that was cool. Yeah. So that's kind of where I sit on that.
Yeah, I think it's one of those things, too, where it's like if you game with the same people, that's not to say that people don't have strengths in different, if we're playing an auction or a bidding game, it's like Michael's going to do well. If we're doing a race game, Michael's going to do well. If it's an efficiency engine, I may do better just out of the gate, just based on our
Doug's going to do well. I'll say that. If there's an efficiency engine, Doug's going to have it figured out.
Unless Dan's playing, then he'll mop the floor with me. So,
he will have designed an insert for that game while playing as well.
So you get those type of things. It's not to say that people aren't better at certain skills or types of games than other people, or that you're completely discrediting. But again, I'm not putting in the effort to master a game that I feel like I played that to my top ability and I could never do better, and I've spent the last 2 months playing. So it doesn't become a huge competition.
And I do have a few of those games, but I mostly keep them going on Board Game Arena, and it is part of that self-improvement of, and we'll hear about one of those games in an upcoming episode that I've just been replaying the heck out of for the last 6 weeks. I'm getting better at it. I went through the same thing with Arc Nova about a year ago on Board Game Arena, where it's like, look, there's a complexity to this that I just want to try to figure out. But not with my game group, not with my family, because nobody would want to play a game with me like that. You know what I mean? That's where the thing. It's not fun.
Yeah, I was going to say the big no-no to me is when you're introducing a game to new people. I've had experiences where I've gotten last place and lost, and they're some of the best experiences I've had gaming. It didn't need to be the one holding up the trophy at the end. It was just fun. And winning doesn't help if in turn you've created an awful experience for everybody else at the table.
Yeah.
Me playing a game that I played 8 times with new people that have never played the game and me lapping them by 200 points doesn't make it fun or increase the chance that they're going to want to come back to the table.
Yeah, I did have the inverse happen at our regional convention this past year, though, where I was heavy game, right? City of the Big Shoulders, 5-hour hobby game. So I was going out of my way to be more congenial and really explain and maybe not be as ruthless. And next thing I know, I look across the table and, I'm playing with 2 hobby gamers who are sharks, and I'm already down 1,500. I've already lost it. How am I ever going to catch up? So I do think that setting matters, right? If you're playing with kids, if you're playing with your game group, or if you are playing one of those hobby level games, there's a time too where you need to bring it.
Yeah.
you know what you signed up for. You didn't sign up for a 15-minute game of Now with your 9 and 12-year-old. You signed up for a 5-hour event, and you better be able to competently play it. So I have actually erred on that side of it over the last couple of years as well, where it's like, man, I really should have played that game better.
Well, and that's the thing. It's like if you're gaming with people regularly, you know what the vibe is. You know you can handle that. If you're playing with people that you don't know and you're the one introducing them, I do think you should be on the side of being a good game master more so than this is me competitively competing to get my to make an amazing experience for me, right?
Yeah.
And that's not to say that you can't win a game.
Let me build a monument to myself here over the next 4 hours.
It just depends on how you do it, right? So it's like, if you happen to win, fine. But if you happen to win while at the same time, it's like, oh, I forgot to mention this rule. You can actually do this and I can steal all of your goods. It's like, yes, you can do that, but you're also a jerk. So I think those things come into play when you're talking about balancing fun and winning. That ultimately depends on how you approach a hobby, how your group approaches a hobby, and more importantly, do you want people to play with you again? Those are kind of where I'm coming. Where I think the balance is when are you in a position to play all out, and when are you in a position to be a good host? And those things can change.
Let's end on that, and let's send it over to our Discord to jump in, because this is the nice thing where we don't just have to beg people to email us. I am very excited to see what happens in the School of Gaming channel on our Discord as people react to this, and how do you balance winning and having fun?
Every week, Michael and I highlight a list of games we want to play, enjoy, or spread the word about. And plus, it's lists. Everybody loves lists. This week, we're going to be talking about our high 5 anticipated games of 2025. I have 5 on my list. I thought about coming into this list with 0 because I am out of... I just have not really been seeking new games to try out.
Yeah.
Three of the games on my list are ones that I have backed on Kickstarter that I'm excited. I'm just waiting for them to get here. And the other 2 are ones one is completely new, and the other one I've learned about at Gen Con that still hasn't come out yet that I'm excited about.
So I do have 10. I would like to just run through 10 through 6 quickly, in 90 seconds total, just to talk about them, just to kind of have a little bit of banter back and forth, if that's okay.
Is
that okay? Number 10 for me is Vantage from Jamie Stegmaier and Stonemaier Games. This is an open world game that is very much inspired by Zelda Breath of the Wild, which is a fantastic game on the Switch or other devices if people play it. And I've been following the Designer Journal and getting the newsletter, and I'm very intrigued by this game. Not sure if I'm going to I am sure I won't run out and pre-order it right away. It's one that I want to see on the table, see if the colors work, and really curious to see what he's done for design choices on it. So that's my number 10. Number 9 is a re-implementation of Merchants of Amsterdam, a Reiner game from the Dr. Reiner Knizia, famed designer and guest and colleague of the Game Schooler podcast in episode 191. A little bit of a stretch to say some of that, but Merchants of Amsterdam is a game I've been wanting to play. I can't even get a hold of it. It's been out of print for a while, and All Play is bringing it back as Merchants of Andromeda. And I really actually like the Euro-y Merchants of Amsterdam theme. So I'm a little, I put this on the list because I'm intrigued by the re-implementation of it to see what All Play does.
I thought you just had to buy every game that has Andromeda in the title from now on.
I knew you were going there. I absolutely knew you were going there, Doug. One moment. Number 8 for me, Doug. I don't know. I actually put a comment on Board Game Geek. I comment very infrequently, but when is this coming out? Dungeons and Dragons, Edge of the Realms, designed by Bill Walker Harding. Explore the kingdom, visit enchanted landmarks, chart your way to victory. From what I can tell about the game, you're actually building a map, and I don't know if that map could be played in future adventures. So this this anticipation. I'm just more curious about it. There's almost nothing out there on it. But anytime we do this anticipated list, I always look at what does Dr. Knizia have coming out? What does Phil Walker Harding have coming out? Two of my favorite designers, and this is one that I'm intrigued by. Now to get into...
I kind of assumed you would just put the entire Bitewing catalog on the list.
No, surprisingly, I don't have any from Bitewing coming.
Really?
I don't know if they'll actually deliver in 2025. I believe in them.
Because they have like 30 Reiner Knizia games coming out.
They have 3 in a trilogy coming out, which you'll hear more about later. But I'm just going to keep it moving here.
Okay.
Number 7, Kinfire Council is a game. We talked about Kinfire Delve, Vainglory's Grotto back in a recent Spotlight episode, and Kinfire Council is a follow-up in that series, and I am very excited to see it and explore it. That one has me very intrigued, and I like what's going on there. That designer is one that we've played some of his other games recently, I do believe, and so I'm excited to get into that. And then the last one before I bring Doug into this segment, Wroth. WROTH. This is designed by Manny Tremblay and published by Chip Theory Games. It is a dice selection area majority game with just crazy, wild, beautiful art and some pretty cool player powers where I am intrigued by it. I know, Doug, area majority is not one of your favorites, but for me, I love it. I love trying to get control of one part of the board and maybe even involving some bluffing in there. But I really like what Manny Tremblay does with art and has done with dice in the past with the Dice Throne series as a co-designer of some of those. So those are my 10 through 6 that I'm anticipating and looking forward to playing and trying at some point.
All right. Well, what's your number 5?
Yeah, to get to the list proper, as my friend Doug would say, number 5 is Apotha Bakery, the Culinary Alchemist. And folks, this is one that I'm either going to hit out of the park and be like, boy, how is that guy so smart? Or boy, was that a reach. But this is from designer Paulo Jones and a small publisher, Lux Lupo. And in Apotha Bakery, you are foraging resources, brewing elixirs, and baking cakes to heal adventurers. So a little, I am somewhat a sucker for set collection to fulfill orders. And this one just has some really cute art, and it looks approachable. It's one that I'm looking for. I mean, spoiler, I did back this one a while back, and I'm looking forward to playing it. We'll see if it stays on the list or if some of those others move up. But that is number 5 for me for most anticipated. It's one that I know when I get it, I'll get it opened up and get the solo going right away. Has some Dreadful Meadows vibes for me and some other games that we've played recently. So that's my number 5.
Looks interesting.
Yeah.
My number 5 we learned about at Gen Con. It's been released in Germany already, and that is 3 chapters. Coming from Amigo, and Joel Hout is the designer. And this is one where the first round you're drafting cards, just a straight draft around the table. And the next you are going to be doing trick taking with those cards. Except you're not really collecting the trick. It's like whoever plays the highest card is going to get 2 hearts or 2 points. And then, but as you play the cards, some of the cards have abilities on them. So if I was playing the 4th card down, mine might say I get a point or a gem or something for, every ogre that was played previously. So
Richard Garfield?
No, Joe Hout.
Okay.
Okay. Is the designer. So there's points for winning tricks, points that you can earn from the card that you played during the trick, and then at the end of the 3rd chapter is scoring all of the cards that you drafted. So in a typical trick taker, you'd kind of all throw your card out there and then collect them. This you just put in your own personal discard pile. So
I'm really surprised this is this low on your list, Doug. I didn't mean to interrupt you, but I do know when Alex Yeager, the CEO of Amigo North America, brought this game out, Doug's eyes got huge. And folks, this was the last day of Gen Con or Saturday of Gen Con?
Yeah.
We were 80 demos into Gen Con.
Yeah.
And can I just take that German version home? I mean, where can we get a copy? When's that coming out? You were really excited about that one.
I think
cool.
it's gonna fit a lot of the a lot of things I like in a single game, which is drafting cards, trick taking in an approachable way. You're not matching suits. You're just playing out numbers, whoever has the highest number, and then scoring all of your drafted cards together. So the idea that I might be taking a card that is low because it'll help me score points at the end of the game, but not help me score points during the game. That gives me some of those like Fantasy Realms and Marvel Remix realm or Marvel Remix type of feel to it. It's really intriguing to me. So that's my number 5, 3 chapters.
Great. Looking forward to that one as well. Number 4 for me was also on my list from 2023. It's also an ingredient collection game. And I thought, man, how many of these am I going to have on my list? But folks, I'm excited, and that's Critter Kitchen. Designers Alex Cutler and Peter C. Hayward. And the artist is Sandra Tang, the same artist from Flamecraft, and the publisher is Cardboard Alchemy. So this one should deliver actually in the next month and a half or so-ish. One that I'm kind of a theme from this is games that I backed in late 2023 or some point in 2024, and just really excited for when they come in. I still do enjoy that part of the hobby most of the time. If I've backed them at this point, I feel really good about them. So that's number 4 for me is Critter Kitchen. Not going to say a whole lot more than that because I do anticipate talking about it more just in the next few months or so.
All right. My number 4 is actually one that has already moved something to my for sale shelf before I've even gotten it, and that is Railroad Tiles. So this is from Horrible Guild and Helmer Hawk and Lorenzo Silva, which is a actual tile placement version of Railroad Ink, which I like Railroad Ink, but I really have a hard time getting it to the table, and people don't like drawing drawing their own tracks on the board. It's got a dry erase type of thing. And this one I think is just going to clean up a lot of that. And so I'm really looking forward to having a theme I like in a package I like from designers I like that I think I will get to the table more. So that is my number 4, Railroad Tiles.
Awesome. Yeah, there won't be any surprise for these next 3 because I've been talking about them at length, I feel like, over the last year plus. Number 3 is Marvel Dice Throne X-Men. I just cannot wait for the next chapter in Dice Throne and what comes in that with the missions that will be added to it. Very, 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 very excited for that one to show up. Anybody who's listened to our podcast for more than one episode knows that both Doug and I are huge Dice Throne Adventures and all things Roxley Dice Throne fans, and this is one that I'm very excited about.
All right. Yeah, my number 3 is one that similar to Michael's number 5. It could be great, it could be a disaster, but everything about it, I'm very intrigued, and that is a game called Deep Regrets. This is classified as a game about fishing progressively more horrifying things out of the ocean. And the designer and the artist is Judson Cowan from TEDx Games. And the look of this game from the pictures of it just looks so bright and vibrant in a cool theme of how deep are you going to go, and you're not just catching fish, you're catching weird monsters and things like that with the very interesting dice, and just looks really cool. I don't know a ton about it. A couple episodes back we talked about what our qualifiers are for a game, and it's like currently it's at a 2.5. It's 30 to 150 minutes, so it must be close to 30 minutes a player, as I'm guessing. So it's hitting a lot of the buttons that I'm interested in, and so I'm interested to see, if this is good or a bust. But just from appearances, looks really cool. So that's my number 3, Deep Regrets.
Awesome. That does look cool. Interesting how our lists are different. I think we could potentially have some crossover at some point, but I don't think this one will hit your list. But I also don't think that listeners are going to be surprised that's number 2 on my list, and that is World Order from the same design team that designed Hegemony, Lead Your Class to Victory. And the publisher's Hegemonic Project games in World Order. You are playing one of the superpowers, I believe, in the year 2010. So the year's 2010 and the world is drastically changing. And so you could take, China, Russia, the United States, some other countries, and you're vying for power. I was, how do I say this? Pleasantly surprised by what I saw at a Gen Con media event. Our friends over at Flat River Games had a media event at Gen Con 2024, and we just got to see this on the table and everything from. So I was worried, Doug, that this was going to be a game that I couldn't get other humans to play with me. And when I saw it, I immediately thought of the game Campaign Trail and thought looks to be a little bit more approachable than Hegemony, a little bit shorter time. Yeah, you're still in for a 2 to 3 hour adventure, but one that I am very excited to see and get. And at the end of the day, I just love how they're card games. And yeah, you're moving stuff around the board, but you're really managing what's in your hand and deciding what to play next. And so that's my number 2 game. I will also make a promise to you, Doug, that when it comes in, 1, I'll tell you, so that you know it's in my collection. But 2, I will try not to just make you eat this game and consume it. So but I do at a regional convention coming up next October, which is only like 8 months away. I do hope that it's in by then, so I can GM it and get it played and hopefully bring some joy to some other folks as well. So that's my number 2 most anticipated World Order.
More refined individuals.
No, not at all. But Doug, you say 2 to 3 hours. You can't just say, hey, game group.
Yeah.
I know we're only getting together every other week now, but sit down. It's going to take me 1 hour to butcher this teach and drag you guys along, and potentially you might think it's an okay game at the end. You can't do that to other humans. I can't, at least.
All right. My number 2 is the heavyweight on my list, and that is Luthier, which is from designer Dave Beck and Abe Burson. And I thought they did such a good job with Distilled. That I was, this is from Paverson Games, immediately interested just based on that. I think Dice Tower did a playthrough on it that I watched. I'm a fan of music and musical instruments, and so if it has that thematic and Euro connection that I expect from these designers based on what happened in Distilled, I think I will really like this one, and so I'm looking forward to playing it.
Do you play the violin, Doug?
What's that?
Do you play the violin?
No, just the guitar poorly.
Okay.
No, that seems like sorcery. Play a violin. You're a real, like a fretless bass. People that can do that stuff are amazing.
Yes,
marvelous. Yes. So that's my number 2, Luthier.
Wonderful. Number 1 for me is The Elder Scrolls: Betrayal of the Second Era. I don't want to say essentially a follow-up to Too Many Bones, but essentially to me it appears to be a sequel to Too Many Bones, and The Elder Scrolls was a video game that once upon a time when I played video games I did enjoy. I think it was all the way back on the PS3 when I was doing a little bit of Skyrim. Must be almost 15 or maybe even more than that. Man, I'm getting old, Doug. But anyway, back to why I'm anticipating to play it. It looks like you get a character, you go on an adventure, and you level up your skills. It actually, although the weight on Board Game Geek is currently a 365, I don't know how, because there's only a few hundred copies out and about in the world right now. Like one container's been delivered. But it does look more approachable. And I'm really speaking strictly from a solo standpoint or getting it up and running with my 15-year-old. And I just had so much fun with Too Many Bones this past year, and I was very late to the party in that I am... it might not come up on any game of the week or even a spotlight segment on the show, but for me, with where I'm at, I cannot wait for this thing to arrive, to get it going, and to just explore that game.
That is no small investment, Michael.
Well, there's different tiers to it, Doug. Yeah, it's no small any way you go. No, you're right.
My number one, Michael already mentioned, but specifically the Marvel Dice Thrones missions is my number one, and it should be delivering shortly. But I am fortunate enough that I've got a good buddy that will love going through these missions, and I can see the fun of playing this game, and to be able to do it in one-off missions instead of an entire campaign just is so appealing to me, to be able to set up, play, and have that cooperative gameplay experience without I don't want to say hassle, but the amount of time commitment and mental energy that goes into a full campaign.
Yeah.
So I'm really anxious to get this.
I would say hassle.
Yeah. So this was on my list last year, and it's on the top of my list this year again.
Before we wrap, who's your go-to Marvel character?
I don't know if I even have one.
Oh, wow. Okay.
I don't know. There's not.
Growing up, I was always a Wolverine guy.
Yeah, no, I don't have a specific, like,
cool.
I don't know, maybe Iron Man or Captain America, depending on which side of the.
No, X-Men.
Oh, just X-Men?
Yeah.
Well, the Marvel Dice Throne Missions has everything in it, though. It's not
right
just
in.
X-Men.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I'm already mapping out Wolverine then. If I didn't know if he was your absolute favorite.
No,
I needed to have a backup. But
No, you're safe.
Claws out, baby.
So those are our anticipated games. Let us know in the Discord what games you're looking forward to in 2025. We'd love to hear about it. Subscribe to the podcast and follow us on X at GameSchoolerU. Again, our Discord, gameschooler.com/Discord. Next week, we're going to be talking about Art Society, playing games you don't like, and we're going to be revisiting our top 10 from 2023. Thank you so much for spending the last hour or so with us. We truly appreciate it.
Now get out there and keep gaming.